It's a beautiful spring morning, and you've got the Blue Route. Traffic is light, and you're right on schedule. Got an okay load of passengers today. Pretty average-looking folks. But what do you really know about them? This is Bill. He has AIDS. Over 250,000 cases of AIDS have been reported in America. And to date, 68% of those cases have ended in death. Now, meet Julie. She's HIV positive. There are an estimated 1 million Americans with that same deadly potential. That's one person out of every 250 in our nation. And here's Charlie. He carries hepatitis B, an even more common blood-borne pathogen. Sooner or later, one of them will board your coach, as they have every right to do. Are you ready? Do you know what to do for the safety of your passengers and fellow transit workers? For your own safety? It's time to get your ticket to safety.
Dr. Davis, telephone, please. Dr. Davis, telephone, please.
Well, your throat's clear, and your lungs sound good, but I don't like that cough. Stop at the receptionist and get an appointment in about 10 days, and let's have another look, okay?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Patterson. I'll see you in a week or so.
Stay well, Bill. This business about the biological hazards of blood-borne pathogens is obviously charged with emotion and fear. And unfortunately, too many of you out there are, let's face it, uninformed and confused about those hazards. So let's do a quick review of what those hazards are. Blood-borne pathogens are microorganisms that are carried in the blood and can cause serious diseases. The blood-borne pathogens that occur most frequently are hepatitis B virus, or HBV, which causes hepatitis, a potentially fatal liver disease, and human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, which is thought to lead to, yes, AIDS, the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. AIDS affects the body's natural ability to fight off even common diseases and illnesses like pneumonia, and we all know about the tragic results. Although research continues on many fronts, there is no cure for AIDS. But for hepatitis B virus, there are both vaccinations to prevent infection and early treatment to limit development of the infection. You may want to pursue getting a comprehensive hepatitis B vaccination program. We'll talk more about that a little later. At the beginning of this tape, I said these dangerous microorganisms are carried in the blood. Well, they also have the potential of being carried in body fluids, and that fact has contributed to more fear and confusion about the spread of these diseases. The body fluids of greatest concern are blood and blood products like wound drainage, semen, vaginal secretions, and saliva during dental procedures, for then it is frequently contaminated with blood. Most other common body fluids, such as tears, perspiration, even vomit, urine, and feces, are not considered dangerous unless they are visibly contaminated with blood. I'm frequently asked, how do we know if the body fluids contain blood? Or how can we tell who is infected? One of the most important things I'd like you to remember is that you just cannot be sure who is or who isn't. So you must be very cautious and treat all blood and body fluids as if they are infected. Before any of these contaminated fluids can infect you, they have to enter your body. Frequently, they enter through mucous membranes or through a break in the skin, such as a cut or a scratch. You've heard the precautions about sexual transmission and drug users sharing infected needles. Although anything is possible, I guess there's not much sexual activity or group shooting up going on in the back of your bus. Other incidents probably represent a higher exposure concern for you and your passengers.
Your bus is your place of business, and like every at-work situation, there is the potential of accident, the potential for blood and body fluids to be spilled.
You're it. You right? Ah, I think I hurt my nose.
A nosebleed. No big deal, you think. But wait, under the concept Dr. Patterson just talked about, that blood should be considered dangerous. When the guy you picked up in front of the corner bar said, "Thanks, pal, you're my designated driver," you and the maintenance crew weren't anticipating having to clean up this kind of a spill. And when the nice lady cut her finger on the broken pickle jar, everyone on the bus wanted to be so helpful. They, too, could potentially become infected. Though not great, there is the potential of accident exposure to contaminated blood and body fluids by yourself, your passengers, and your fellow transit system professionals. So be prepared.
As you've seen, an accident on your bus can, in fact, put you and others in jeopardy. But let me repeat, before any of these contaminated fluids can infect you, they have to enter your body. The greatest protection you have to prevent an infection is your skin. But you may not even be aware that you have that cut or scratch we talked about. So be sure to cover and protect yourself from contact with all blood and body fluids. OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, requires all industries where workers are at potential risk to offer training in the universal precautions we've already talked about. Remember, they are simply the philosophy that you consider all human blood and body fluids to be potentially infectious, and that you take all precautions to avoid contact. As OSHA-required bloodborne pathogen exposure control planning is implemented in the transit industry, many vehicles will be equipped with a biohazard kit, and you'll be trained in its use. Importantly, the biohazard kit contains what we call your last line of defense against bloodborne pathogens. This personal protection equipment includes disposable gloves to protect your hands, disinfectant spray for decontamination, paper towels and absorbent powder to clean up spills, leak-proof bags, dustpan and brush for disposal, biohazard bags and puncture-proof containers, and disinfectant towelettes for immediate hand cleaning. Your first responsibility is to respond logically and calmly to the situation. That includes care for your passengers, the vehicle, and of course the individual involved, and your fellow transit workers. Assuming you've pulled safely off the road and radioed for an ambulance if the situation warrants, put on those disposable gloves before you deal with any first aid requirements or clean up that spill material.
So the kid whose nose was bleeding seems to have it under control. Now, to deal with that bloody tissue and the blood on the seat. Your biohazard kit will contain not only the personal protection you require, but also cleanup supplies. That bloody tissue must be retrieved and disposed of in a leak-proof bag. If the tissue is saturated to the point that it would drip when squeezed, then it must go into a red biohazard bag. Any blood on the seat or floor must be cleaned up with towels and disinfected as soon as possible. This means using the biohazard kit disinfectant spray, soaking the area, and picking up any residue with paper towels or absorbent powder. You must always use the disinfectant again on the spill area after spill cleanup. All of your cleanup materials are carefully discarded in the red biohazard bag. When you've finished, the next step is to carefully remove your contaminated gloves. You will have practiced this during your training. If you have any concern that the bag has been punctured or will leak, immediately double bag it. The outside bag must always be red if the inside bag is red. To assure that your hands are not contaminated after removing your gloves, clean your hands with disinfectant towelettes from the kit. These also go into the bag. The ideal method of cleaning your hands is a thorough washing with ample use of soap and running water. In fact, OSHA requires that even after using gloves and towelettes, hands be washed as soon as feasible. If your cleanup includes anything like that broken pickle jar, things called sharps, in other words, the kind of things that could penetrate your gloves or the plastic bag, then you should pick them up with mechanical means, like the dustpan and brush in your kit. Do not use your fingers, even if gloved. Dispose of the sharps in a leak-proof, puncture-proof container, properly marked with the biohazard symbol. This same disposal technique would also be used if discarded hypodermic needles were found. If your cleanup includes handling a discarded condom, gloved hands and a leak-proof bag are required.
16 to base.
Base quit.
Qualified emergency medical assistance is only a call away, but the regional transit carrier can be a long way from assistance. Here, the training will be even more important. When your route is completed and you're back at the garage, you'll need to dispose of those hazardous wastes properly. OSHA 1910.1030 explains these requirements. You will also most likely be required to fill out an incident report form. This document will ask you to describe the incident, your protection worn, your exposure to blood or body fluids, particulars about the injured passenger, and your hepatitis B vaccine status.
And speaking of the hepatitis B vaccine, I promised we'd review that. If your duties place you at risk for contact with bloodborne pathogens, OSHA regulations require your employer to have an exposure control plan, which must include a hepatitis B vaccination program. This vaccination for hepatitis B is a series of 3 shots over a 6-month period. As part of your bloodborne pathogen training, you will receive details on this program, including an explanation of its safety and effectiveness. The vaccinations are performed under the supervision of a licensed physician. You may decline to participate in the program, but must sign a refusal form, and if you later change your mind, you can opt back into the program. The incident report form I mentioned a moment ago is also a part of the exposure control plan and hepatitis B vaccine program. It ensures proper follow-up for you and any others involved in an exposure incident. Well, that's a quick overview of bloodborne pathogens, your risks and responsibilities to your passengers, your colleagues, and yourself. I suggest you take a close look at the manual that accompanies this videotape. Discuss these concepts and recommendations with your supervisor and fellow transit professionals. And remember, being concerned, being trained, and being prepared is your ticket to safety.